This episode of Hot Cup Cold Case contains disturbing details about a violent crime and may not be appropriate for some listeners. Hey, all you cool cats and kittens.
Oh, God.
I've been wanting to do that ever since you talked about it on the last episode. It was everything I wanted it to be.
Checked every box up.
Well, I'm Brant.
I'm Rachel.
And this is Hot Cup,
Cold Case.
where every couple of weeks we invite you into our apartment and share with you the two things that keep us up at night. And the first is a hot cup of caffeine, and the second is a cold case. As we mentioned in the previous episode, we're changing the format a little bit for the time being, and since I shared a cold case with you a couple weeks ago, I thought I'd share a closed case with you tonight. And since I mentioned the Snapchat murderer in the last episode, that is the story I'm going to tell you tonight. And then, Rach, you've prepared a mugshot story for us, right?
I have.
You got a teaser for us? Tease us with some of that teasing essence?
Just stupid.
I can't wait.
That's all I can say. And you're going to have to excuse me tonight, everybody out there, because I have currently been up since 4:15 because my toddler likes to wake up before dawn lately.
Yeah, this quarantine has got our body clocks all kinds of cattywampus. And since we live in Michigan and our governor has extended the stay-at-home order through June, we're heading into the third month of our quarantine.
Yeah, it seems like it's been an eternity stuck inside four walls. I am ready to get out.
And it has been beneficial in some ways.
Oh, yeah, I'm super thankful you don't have a commute, that you're just in the other room if we need you.
Well, actually, I was talking about how we blame everything on the governor around here.
Oh, yes, that as well.
And this has nothing to do with politics. I think that our governor is doing the best she can, especially in these circumstances. But anytime our daughter asks us to go to Chuck E. Cheese or to play at the park, we explain to her that we can't because there's a virus out there and the governor has shut all of those things down. And after explaining that to her for a couple of weeks, I suddenly realized that it's a lot easier to blame the governor on things around this house when I don't want to be the bad guy. So for instance, if our daughter doesn't want to eat her vegetables, I'm sorry, the governor said you had to eat your vegetables.
I haven't taken it that far.
When our daughter doesn't want to go to bed, I'm sorry, the governor said it's bedtime. But I guess I need to stop blaming everything on the governor because that is bound to backfire on me pretty soon.
Oh, yeah, and she's a very smart little girl, so I could foresee that happening sooner than later.
In other news, Rach, I haven't told you this, but
Yes.
we got our first podcast troll.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. And actually, I'm super excited about it. Remember when I told you you haven't made it as a podcast until you get your first troll?
So when did this happen?
So this week on our YouTube channel, someone with the handle Galileo Gal left a comment about one of our cold cases and said, "This is not a cold case by any stretch of the imagination."
Which one was it?
The Snapchat murders.
Okay, it's definitely a cold case. What does she think it is?
And I was like, first of all, yaha. And second of all, cheers to you, Galileo Gal, because you just made us an official podcast in my mind.
I do agree.
We
Yes.
could not do this without you. Well, we could, but it wouldn't be as exciting.
We wouldn't feel as official.
Also, since we've been in quarantine, Rach and I have been selling things we no longer need on Facebook and eBay. And I recently posted the second season of Boston Legal on DVD. Does anyone else out there watch that show?
It's old school courtroom drama.
Yeah, we love it. It's got James Spader and William Shatner, two of my favorite actors. But apparently, we are the only ones who love it. You know how when you post something on Facebook, you'll get a notification that will tell you if you spend this much, you can boost your post and reach this many people.
Right.
Well, after I listed that on Facebook Marketplace, Facebook sent me a notification that said, if you boost this post for $3.50, you will reach 0 people.
I told you before, we are old school souls.
So if you're a fan of Boston Legal out there and you're looking for the second season on DVD, I got you.
Yeah, we have one.
So by the time you hear this, we will have published our second Red Eye episode on our Patreon page. If you are not already subscribed to our Patreon page and you're a total stan of the podcast, you can go to hotcupcoldcasepodcast.com and there's a link there where you can subscribe and listen to all of our bonus content, including the very first mock recording we ever did for the podcast and all of the Red Eye episodes we published so far.
Yeah, we're so grateful for all of our Patreon subscribers.
Yes, we're your biggest stans.
And also on our merch page, we are selling a white coffee cup, and I only have 2 left, and then we're changing the design. So everyone that did buy one, keep those suckers, because those are limited editions. And they're going to be worth so much money one day. Oh,
yeah,
man.
I bet if you list them on Facebook Marketplace and boost your post, you could reach 0 people.
Hey, no. It's going to be vintage one day. It's going to be worth a lot of money.
I don't know what I'm going to do if I ever see one of our podcast cups on Facebook Marketplace.
I'm going to be sad. Why are you getting rid of it? That's a treasure.
I'm going to buy it back. Be like, that's mine. Well, now that that's out of the way, you want to hear about the Snapchat murderer?
I do.
Buckle up.
Buttercup.
So on April 27th of 2017, 20-year-old Matham Alfaraji left home to meet up with one of his closest friends, Salvador Sanchez. Salvador worked for his father's landscaping company and was also a champion wrestler at the high school they both attended. The two were planning to share a few drinks and smoke some marijuana together at California's Mountain View Park. Later that evening, one of Matham and Salvador's mutual friends, Alex Gendron, was scrolling through Snapchat when he came across an alarming post on Salvador's account. The next morning, after being unable to determine Matham's whereabouts, Alex texted one of their mutual friends, Kevin Rosado, with his concerns for Matham. Kevin said he remembered waking up to those texts, which read, quote, "I don't know where Matham's at. Look at Snapchat." End quote. According to Kevin, quote, "The Snapchat videos were actually audio recordings of what we assume is Matham crying in the background. And then Salvador is like yelling into the microphone, and it's all black. It's just audio saying, 'You know why I'm doing this. You know why I'm doing this.' Just yelling at Matham while he's crying." End quote.
Okay, that's so weird.
Isn't that creepy?
Yes.
And what makes it even weirder is that both Matham and Salvador were really close friends. So over the course of the next couple days, Matham's friends continued to try and get a hold of him with no response. Meanwhile, Salvador, who was also an aspiring rap artist, began posting cryptic rap lyrics on Snapchat, which included phrases like, quote, "In the arms of a friend is where you die," end quote.
Oh, Lord.
So Matham's friends decided to confront Salvador about his strange Snapchat posts and ask him if he had any idea where Matham was. They knew that Salvador was the last person to see Matham, but Alex said, quote, "I didn't think he killed anyone. I thought maybe he got in a fight with someone," end quote.
Okay.
So Alex and Kevin showed up at Salvador's house, and when they asked him about Matham, they were shocked when he told them he, quote, "took out Matham because he could have been a problem in the future for his future ideals of being the next big thing."
What?
End quote. Yeah, that's what Salvador said. So Matham's friends then tried to awkwardly laugh it off, thinking Salvador couldn't possibly be serious, right?
Right.
But that's when Salvador did something that suddenly made their blood run cold. He reached into his bedroom closet and pulled out a bloody set of white clothes.
What?
And Alex said, quote, "We were there when he admitted to us about killing. He showed us the clothes covered in blood. When I looked at the white clothing, there was more blood than white. And I looked him in the eyes, and I saw pure evil in his eyes that day." End quote.
Who keeps that kind of stuff?
Right. And that's when Kevin and his friends knew they had to call the police.
And they have to get out, like right now.
Yeah.
Listen, all you young folk out there, you need to get off the Snapchat. This is so dangerous. It's getting so dangerous.
Have you ever had a friend
No. I don't know where this is going, but no.
Have you ever had a friend share a dark secret with you?
Yes.
Care to share?
No, it's a secret.
You're a good secret keeper.
I am a great secret keeper.
Well, I'm not, and I've got a story for you.
Oh, great. Okay. Sorry, anyone out there that has stole Brant's secrets.
Well, this story is from when I was in junior high, back in the summer of 2001. So my best friend Brian and I were hanging out at our friend Catherine's house for the day. Both her parents were at work, as well as her older sister, and she decided to give us a tour of the house.
Yeah, let me just stop you there. No, our daughter is not going to be at some boy's house, and his parents aren't even home.
Absolutely not.
It's already a problem with this story.
Well, the tour ended in her older sister's bedroom.
Mm-mm.
And it was kind of like the West Wing from Beauty and the Beast. You know, it was forbidden.
Right.
Because at any moment, her older sister could come home from work. Well, the phone rang, and Catherine said she had to go answer it because it was her mom calling to check in on her. But before she left the room, she said, whatever you do, don't look in the closet.
It's the number one place you looked, isn't it?
So, of course, my friend Brian immediately searched the closet the moment she left the room. And I'm kind of just laughing at him because he doesn't even know what he's looking for.
Right.
He's just moving stuff around, trying to find whatever it was that Catherine was talking about. Well, he didn't find anything. And Catherine ended up walking back in the room just as Brian was exiting the closet and caught him red-handed. And she looked me right in the eye, in all seriousness, and was like, "You saw it, didn't you?" And without skipping a beat, I just said, "Oh yeah, we saw it."
You're a liar.
And a good one too, because her demeanor completely changed.
Uh-oh.
She gasped and then said, "No, you didn't. What color was it?" Once again, without skipping a beat, I just said, "Green." And then she was like, "Oh my God, you did see it."
Brant!
And at that point, she goes, "Well, I guess there's no point in hiding it now." And Brian is just looking at me like, "How did you do that?" Catherine walks in the closet, and when she comes back out, she's holding these strange objects that I have never seen before in my young life, Rachel. And it's at that point that I'm like, what are those?
Yes, what are you talking about?
And she holds up the green vase she has in one hand and says, "This is called a bong."
Okay.
And then she holds up a green object that she's holding in the other hand and says, "And this is my sister's sex toy."
Oh, God! That's not where I thought this was going.
Right? It was at that point that I was like, first of all, wash your hands. Second of all, I gotta go.
Yeah, absolutely. Get out of there right now.
And I never hung out at Catherine's house ever again.
I do want to clarify, too, for all of you young listeners, Catherine had to leave the room because they had a landline.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that.
Yes. That means that the phone was connected to the wall.
Oh God.
That's why she had to leave and run and go get the phone.
That just made me feel so old.
Oh, yeah, we are for sure old.
And I was already feeling old because you ordered me nose hair clippers from Amazon this week.
No, we're not talking about this on the podcast. Continue your story, please.
Well, back to this awful story. So, local law enforcement immediately began investigating Matham's disappearance and quickly arrested Salvador during a traffic stop in town. While Escondido police detectives interviewed Salvador, investigators also obtained a warrant to search the Sanchez residence. And based on Alex and Kevin's tip, they began by looking through Salvador's bedroom closet, and believe it or not, they found exactly what the boys had described to them: a white hoodie, white t-shirt, white shorts, and white tennis shoes, all of which were covered in dark red bloodstains.
Again, why would you keep that stuff? And why would you wear all white to do that?
Well, Salvador's about to tell us. Obviously, the evidence in this case is overwhelming.
Right.
And Salvador quickly confessed to detectives that he had, in fact, killed his best friend, Matham. He told investigators that once he and Matham arrived at Mountain View Park 3 days earlier, the two had talked about a car accident that Matham had experienced earlier that morning, and Salvador talked about his frustration with the fact that he was a high school graduate who was still mowing lawns for his father's landscaping business. But that's when the story suddenly took an unexpected turn. Escondido police detective Gregory Gay said that Salvador told them, quote, Matham was doing dangerous things, and he was working outside of their small group or crew, placing them in danger, placing their family in danger, and it was necessary for him to kill. End quote.
Okay, so is this like a small gang?
That's what it sounds like.
Okay.
And it was then that Salvador said he challenged Matham to a, quote, fight to the death.
What?
Yes, like a gladiator match.
These are like two 18-year-olds, right?
Right. And Detective John O'Donnell, who was also present during Salvador's interrogation, said, quote, Salvador has a creed based on the movie series Fast and Furious of ride or die. So you have to be loyal to him to the end, including death. He said he lived that creed among the crew or squad he was a part of. End quote. So Salvador was a year younger than Matham, but as I mentioned earlier, he was a champion high school wrestler. And he also stood 3 inches taller and outweighed Matham by 40 pounds. He told investigators the fight itself only lasted about a few minutes, during which he used his competitive wrestling experience to subdue Matham and put him in a chokehold.
Okay, but that wouldn't account for all the blood.
Well, they had a fight.
So we're talking like MMA style here.
Oh yeah, it was a fight to the death. They drew blood. And it was during this time that Salvador recorded those chilling videos, which he later posted on Snapchat.
So he did that on purpose?
Yes. He also confessed to detectives that he had chosen to wear all white clothes to the park that day to symbolize, quote, purity, and that he had stored them in his closet afterwards because, quote, he wanted them for trophies, end quote.
Okay.
Before he left the park, Salvador then called an unsuspecting friend and said he needed help. His friend agreed to meet him and drove out to the park in his SUV. But when he arrived, Salvador opened the back door and suddenly heaved Matham's lifeless body inside while demanding his friend drive them out of town. His friend was in shock, but eventually complied, and the two drove Matham's body out to a remote area of the Rincon Indian Reservation, and neither Salvador nor his friend ever alerted police to what happened that night. The driver later testified that he only acted out of fear for his life.
This just doesn't make any sense.
It's so wild. So when Salvador had finished sharing his story with detectives, he led them out to a remote area on the Rincon Indian Reservation in Valley Center, where they discovered Matham's body buried in a shallow grave. Salvador was charged with first-degree murder, to which he pleaded, get this, not guilty by reason of insanity.
Well, I do have to say, this is sounding like he's got a pretty good shot at that. It's very, very bizarre.
Yeah, so because of the insanity plea, Salvador's trial would consist of 2 phases. The first phase would require the prosecution to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Salvador was guilty of murdering Matham. But during the second phase of the trial, the burden of proof would shift to the defense to show that Salvador was clinically insane at the time of the killing. Prosecutor Claudia Plasencia addressed the court, calling the murder, quote, brutal and so totally unprovoked, end quote. She pointed out that Salvador not only, quote, violently, brutally murdered his best friend, but that he also showed no remorse and has continued to show no remorse, end quote. She went on to say that the victim had no idea that the defendant had plans to murder him, somebody he considered a brother.
Right.
Alex, who had alerted police to Salvador's involvement in Matham's disappearance, said that in the videos Salvador posted on Snapchat, quote, he was proud of what he did. He wouldn't fully admit to what he did. It wasn't like he went on Snapchat and was like, I killed Matham. But he was like vlogging himself saying, yeah, he's just covered in blood. There's blood all over his t-shirt. And he's just like, yeah, I had to do it, end quote. Due to the overwhelming evidence in this case, the jury only deliberated for about 90 minutes before they found Salvador Sanchez guilty of first-degree murder.
Mm-hmm.
But there was still phase 2 of the trial to determine the defendant's sanity at the time of the crime. First up was Salvador's defense lawyer, Deputy Public Defender Ricky Crawford. In his opening statement to the court, he suggested that his client, Salvador, quote, believed he needed to kill because God told him to, end quote. And a woman who knew Salvador told reporters that she remembered a Snapchat he posted in which he said God had instructed him to create a list of people to kill. Even Alex confirmed her story when he told reporters, quote, "This kid's insane. He's not a normal individual. He spoke about having a list. He expressed to us he wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone," end quote. So Crawford even solicited testimony from one doctor who testified in court that he believed Salvador was bipolar and experiencing a manic episode at the time of the murder. Next, Crawford presented the court with one of Salvador's many Snapchat videos, and in it, Salvador states, quote, "I believe everyone is saved, but I believe if you die, you go straight to heaven, so I don't feel guilty," end quote.
Okay.
Right, this is what Claudia Plasencia was talking about when she said that he shows no remorse.
Right, absolutely.
Then it was her turn. So she also solicited testimony from two court-appointed doctors who testified they believed Sanchez was sane at the time of the murder. And Alex went on to tell reporters Salvador, quote, "went from being this quiet, church-centered kid, like he was extremely Christian. He didn't party. He didn't do any hard drugs. He didn't do anything that would lead someone towards doing this, in my opinion. And then, just all of the sudden, within a month, he switched. He had a switch go in his brain, and he became narcissistic, violent, very judgmental, especially to Matham. He was almost in a sense jealous of Matham, but he would just bash heads with him all the time and try to make judgments of Matham. And then over time, gradually, Salvador became more aggressive and just more violent and just angry towards others," end quote. Personally, I think the fact that Salvador said he chose to wear white clothes to the park to represent his, quote, purity definitely proves malicious intent.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was a planned murder. It was premeditated.
But it's also so crazy.
Right.
So the same jury deliberated again, and they found Salvador to be sane at the time of the murder.
Okay.
After the verdict, Salvador's mother, Zara Sanchez, stood with her back turned toward him and told reporters that at night she is, quote, "thinking where I went wrong, thinking what I could have done so this wouldn't have happened," end quote.
Oh, wow.
Finally came the sentencing hearing, and Matham's mother just cried as she addressed the court. And she asked the judge to sentence Salvador to life in prison without parole.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, the judge decided to impose the maximum penalty he legally could under the circumstances, which was 25 years to life.
What?
Meaning Salvador will be eligible for parole in 2043 when he's 45 years old.
Yeah, but he's up for parole. That doesn't mean he'll get parole.
Right. And that is the tragic story of the Snapchat murderer.
This is nuts. Tonight's mugshot is about Jessica Boomershine.
Boomershine?
That is a fun last name.
That's fun to say.
That is fun to say.
Boomershine.
So Jessica was arrested for allegedly breaking into an 85-year-old's home and assaulting him at gunpoint.
Yikes.
She was then detained at the jail. And while in the holding cell, she decided she was done with that place.
Okay.
She was leaving. So in the video I'm about to show you,
Oh my God, there's a video?
you will see that she attempts to escape the holding cell. All right, so this is her.
Okay, I'm watching the video right now, and we'll also post this on our Instagram. It's CCTV footage of her climbing up on a trash can and then attempting to climb into the ceiling tiles of the holding cell before crashing back down to the floor.
She ripped wires out of the wall.
And I'm pretty sure her pants came off while she was climbing. Because like sections of the video were blurred out. And the police are literally right there, like not even 15 feet away. And there's other detainees just sitting there watching her do this.
No, they're like kicked back and relaxed.
Yeah.
Like legs.
Like fully reclined.
Yes.
Like it's a reality show.
So now, on top of her burglary assault charge, she now has an escape charge as well.
But it'll make a great story for the grandkids.
Oh, gosh.
Well, if you need a good laugh today, find us on Facebook or Instagram at Hot Cup Cold Case Podcast and check out this video. And while you're at it, If you have any crazy stories, any at all, and you want to share them with us at hotcupcoldcasepodcast.com, you just might hear them on the podcast during our next Listener Stories episode.
Yeah, and even if you don't have a story, please continue to share the podcast with your friends and encourage them to listen. The more listeners we have, the more stories we can collect and share with you.
Also, if you're enjoying the show, go ahead and rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts or whatever streaming service you're listening to. The more 5-star ratings we get, the easier it becomes for people to find us.
And finally, for even more things to keep you up at night, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Hot Cup Cold Case Podcast or subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Hot Cup Cold Case is written and produced by Rachael and myself, with music by Young Kool-Aid. If you ever need your mug filled,
or your spine chilled,
this is Hot Cup
Cold Case.
So one of our daughter's favorite cartoons is If You Give a Mouse a Cookie on Amazon. And she especially loves the song, We Go Together Like Muffins and Jam. Except she thinks they're saying, we go together like muffins in jail. So she literally walks around the house all day singing, we go together like muffins in jail. And it's like super jazzy. And it's so cute. I almost didn't have the heart to tell her it's jam, not jail. But I also didn't want her growing up thinking that jails are just known for their awesome muffins. There's your next t-shirt design, Rach. We go together like muffins in jail.
Yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make one. That will be available next on our merch store.